Thank you. I'm Mark Garrigus. Along with Cliff Gardner, Alex Kazarian, we represent Lyle and Eric Menendez. Brian Friedman is here, who represents the family that's sitting behind me. On behalf of the family, I think I speak for all of them. We thank the DA for what he did today. And contrary to what some of the questions were, I think it's important to note for those who are, I suppose, cynical that say, oh, it's a political move, it was only done for the election. I'm here to tell you that before there was ever any talk of an election, before there was ever any talk of whether or not he was down in the polls or anything else, this DA had taken seriously our writ of habeas corpus after Judge Ryan issued the request for an informal reply. And when I say he had taken it seriously, in this building, we actually did what's called a conditional examination. We had Joan, who's here, who's Kitty's older sister, who we had preserved her testimony because Joan wanted to be heard, and I wanted her to be heard, even though she's more spry than I am and will live a lot longer than me. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew when I first took this case 18 months ago with Cliff, one of the questions we always got, and that I've always got, is, well, what about Kitty? And I've heard that, I can't tell you, innumerable times. And I'm the lawyer, so who's going to buy what I'm selling? However, I will tell you that the family is uniform behind me in their resolve that these boys need to come home. And today is a monumental, monumental victory on that path. And let me explain to you why. The DA today initiated resentencing. Any minute may have already been done. They filed the request for resentencing in the criminal courts building, the Clara Shortridge Foltz building. Now what happens is it goes in front of a judge. That judge now will make the decision. What the DA recommends is just that. It's a recommendation. It's up to a judge to decide what to do. If there is a hearing, and I say if because there doesn't necessarily have to be one, but if there is a hearing, all of these family members who are behind me will be heard. All of these family members will uniformly ask one thing, which is, bring them home, bring them home, bring them home, bring them home. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. That's uniform. This is the family that knows them. It's the family that believes 35 years is enough. And we anticipate, I know that there was a couple of questions, and by the way, it's much cooler in this room than it was at the DA's office. We can afford HVAC over here. The part of what we plan on doing is highlighting the work that they have done, and the boys, I call them the boys, the brothers have done. I think it resonated with the DA today, and he mentioned the fact that they had, as of 2005, no hope. The Ninth Circuit had rejected their habeas. They had no hope, and they were basically had resigned themselves to live the rest of their lives behind bars. You can go in two different directions at that point. They took a path that is not often traveled, and they have created programs. They have created green space programs. They have the love and support of an enormous family that has waited patiently for this day. I believe before Thanksgiving, they will be home. I still believe that. I believe we will have a hearing. I'm hopeful that we will have a fair hearing. And I want to make one comment. The DA referenced today the divisions in his office. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about it being political, but One of the things that they mentioned today was that there have been 300 resentencings in the course of the 3 and some odd years that this DA has been in office. 300 young men and women have been resentenced, including 28 people for murder. Only 4 have reoffended. Those 4 were technical violations. Literally, were not violent acts. That's an amazing statistic and speaks to redemption and speaks to some of the work that this current DA is doing that has been made a caricature in the media. And I would just say that if you're going to warehouse people, one of the things that Eric and Lyle have done, and I've been down there, Brian can speak to this as well, who's been down there with me, they have created this wonderful green space program that's based on a Norwegian model, which assumes that eventually people are going to be released back into the community. It assumes that rather than release them back in the community to reoffend, let's release them back in the community so they can get acclimated in the community. And in their C files, which is what the DA has been waiting for and what they reviewed today and why they recommended resentencing, in their C files were letters by high-ranking correctional officers, something I've never seen in 40 years, who said, I would not only recommend that Lyle or Eric be resentenced, I would also welcome them as a neighbor in my neighborhood. I've never seen that before. And I think that speaks volume to the idea of redemption. It speaks volumes to the idea of what the kind of good work they're doing. And I think also, if you're going to talk about victims' rights, here are all the victims right here, both sides of the family. They've flown in from all over the country on how much notice? What did I give you?
6 hours.
6 hours notice. They dropped everything. They left work. They canceled appointments to come here in a show of force because enough's enough. They want them to come home. I've become enamored with Joan, and it's an amazing testament to her ability to forgive, for her ability to see the goodness in these young men, and we're just very, very hopeful that we get them released. I said it the other day when we were all at the criminal courts building, nothing would make me more happy than to celebrate Thanksgiving with them, with Joan, and have them out. And with that, we'll take a couple of questions. The family will take a couple of questions, and then we're going to cut it off. It's been a long day, and we're going to get them back home.
I have a question. No, this is not regarding everything, but several months ago, Judge Ryan requested from his people why there was no evidence disclosed in the trial, in the second trial. There was none allowed. He wants to know why. Is that not even a question anymore?
No, that's still a question. It's a great question. Because what Joan is asking is, on the request that he issued in response to the habeas, which is separate than from the resentencing, I take one issue with the DA who said it's still a murder. Remember, back in 1994, and I've mentioned this before, and anybody will listen, I actually tried a battered woman's case, a woman named Yoshi Kale, in 1994. I used the battered woman's defense. Ultimately, we got her a manslaughter, and she was sentenced to probation. It was a long slog. In 1994, with these young men, it was ruled that because they were children, that would not come into evidence. That was, and the DA in the first trial argued men can't be raped. They don't have the equipment. That was where we were then. We are at a different place now. That is the habeas question. For the resentencing question, I will just quote what the resentencing DA said that in all the time they have reviewed C files, they've never seen a more exemplary background while in custody than these two young men.
Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
bothered me for so long because I read it and I couldn't believe it, and then nothing never happened. And the judge and the DA, or not the judge, the DA and the prosecutor agreed that they would not use any because they wanted to get, they had too many
Losses.
trials lost.
Well, that's a,
They needed to pick Menendez up.
well, for those who don't know, you had a judge at the time, and he's still alive, so I'm not saying anything bad about somebody who's not alive, but that judge himself had lost a highly publicized case of a young man when he was a DA. You can look it up. It was called Ricky Kyle. He then presided over the Rodney King case, and we all know what happened in the Rodney King case. That was an acquittal. He then presided over the first Menendez case. That was a hung jury. And then 8 days before evidence started in trial number 2, the rules changed because, a cynic might say, because OJ was acquitted. And I'll take a couple of questions and then, yes.
Okay, so I know he said, all right, it's now murder. So were they found guilty of murder with a special enhancement? And so he's basically taking that special enhancement away. So now it's murder, and is that why it's now 50 years to life as opposed to life without the possibility of parole? And what are the two resentencing laws that he's using here?
So under California law, once he initiates the resentencing, you then have the ability, specifically for a crime before 1990, to have that sentence recalled, to have the special circumstances. What the DA is saying is, we're going to remove the special circumstance. A special circumstance is what prohibits them from getting life, a straight life, which would make them eligible for parole. That right now, in my humble opinion, is the top. That's the ceiling. The judge, after a hearing, could recall that murder conviction, could sentence them to a lesser included, which is a voluntary manslaughter. If you negate the malice, that would make it, and the way you negate the malice is through imperfect self-defense. Manslaughter, they could get time served.
John, if you could, we couldn't hear you on this side. If you could speak a little louder, or someone give her a mic.
If I speak any louder, I'm going to yell
Not
at you.
you, Joe.
Okay.
Joe. And the second question is, do the brothers know that have they spoken to them today? Have they gotten word of what the DA has put on?
I believe that they have gotten word. I believe that they are 100% on board with what we're doing. I don't know why they wouldn't. They've waited, like I say, they lost the last appellate argument roughly 2005
But you have not
until,
spoken to them today.
I didn't say that.
That's what I'm asking. Have you spoken?
Yes. I don't talk about attorney-client.
Mark, with this renewed hope that the brothers will be released, have you as a family talked about where they will go? Will they live with one of you? How will you reacclimate them, assuming the judge goes along with this and the parole board agrees? What are the plans? What hopes do you have for them?
Well, we have, without committing, look, it's obvious that if they're released, it's at least obvious to me, that they will be inundated. And generally, when somebody has been incarcerated and institutionalized for decades, you have to have a reentry plan. We have already put together a reentry plan. If we do the hearing, and it's not by stipulation, that will be what we will provide to the court. We would not be revealing any of that right now for security reasons, but we have a robust reentry plan that we have already previewed with the district attorney, which went into their calculation as to recommending resentencing.
How will they make a living? How will they support themselves?
Well, but the interesting thing about that is both of them are married. Both of them are married to spouses who make a living. Both of them are active students. Lyle is in a master's program. Eric is in an undergrad program. And they have a family that would support them as well. So I'm not going to get into their W-2s or their 1099s.
Do you expect that their prison reform work will continue if they leave prison?
I need you to speak up.
Do you expect that their prison reform work will continue if they are released?
It's my understanding from both of them that one of the things they really love doing is the Green Space Project. I mean, Brian's been down there twice with me to see it. It's an enormous. I invite any of the press. You want to do a story on the Menendez brothers? Take a look at that Green Space Project at the Donovan State Prison. Donovan Prison is a prison that you have to earn your way into. That's part of the incentive system at the California Department of Corrections. What they have done is taken an area that is drab and gray and depressing, frankly. Eric, who is an enormously talented artist, has started to paint or supervise the murals that go around. Lyle, who has gotten his degree and is pursuing his master's in urban planning, has got a project laid out that to me is unbelievable in terms of making it acclimated, and has gone to the point of understanding that having hills, for instance, or having gradients of ground level and not all flat land has something to do with balance and has something to do with aging and has all kinds of an amazing research that's been done. And so, yes, long answer to your question, that's not work that I think for a second they're an abandon. I think they're going to double down into that.
The DA mentioned that the brothers have rehabilitated. Can you tell us how? And second question, have you talked to this judge to know how he's thinking?
Okay, the first question I heard is, how have they rehabilitated? When I say a C file, that's the nomenclature for their file while they're in prison, which has all of their write-ups, all of their commendations, all of anything they've done wrong. Their C files and their analysis is outstanding. The only reason they have any points whatsoever in their C file is because they presently are life without parole prisoners, which necessitates them to be at a level 19. Yes?
Joan spoke last week so eloquently. Would she be willing to give us a reaction today?
No, I don't think so. I think, look, they're here to support, and they all flew in on 6 hours notice, because they don't want any misunderstanding. This is the family. The family is unified, and the family wants them home. Anybody or suggestion otherwise is just unfounded. Any suggestion otherwise is not part of the family.
Do you want to talk about
I'm
Mr. Anderson's statement that he put out today, Bill Anderson?
No, I really don't. I don't think they want to engage. I don't want to be negative. I will just say this. When you go on to the DA's opponent's website, somehow Anderson, of all the 250,000 lawyers in California, found a lawyer who is a disgruntled ex-DA who is endorsing his opponent. And Anderson was invited to speak and never did. So, no, I don't want to talk about it, but I think if you connect the dots, you'll understand what's really happening there. Thank you, everybody.